Okay, everyone. So welcome to a new XAF community stand-up. Today's topic is getting started with Entity Framework Core. So this is a topic that we have covered several times. And basically, there is a lot of curiosity from all XAF users about using Entity Framework Core for new projects or if they should migrate their current projects to Entity Framework Core from XPO. And well, I think that when this news was released last year, like, okay, start new projects with Entity Framework Core, um, a lot of things were not considered. So we want to review this topic again. So this is a review of previous meetings that we had before, and we're going to do a self-application, a basic one, because this is for people who is beginners or who are looking to move to SAF. So we're going to do really basic topics today. And we're going to compare with XPO also. So for those who don't know, SAF application framework is a cross-platform application framework for UI and web API. And it includes several modules like security system, um, charting module, pivot, reporting, and so on and so forth. Being the one of the biggest things that they have is the security system for me, because it's something that is super complicated to write for yourself. But it's more than that. So um, if you have seen stuff before, most of the examples that there used to be like in the wild were like XPO, but SAF is created using a design pattern that in some ways implement the solid design pattern. And if you use the solid design pattern, there is like two principles that are really important, and they are used in SAF, which is the scope substitution principle, which means you can replace a class for any of their base classes. That's one of the principles. And the other one is interface segregation, which means that you should make small interfaces to define operations or data contracts, and that your application should not handle real implementations, just the contracts. That way you can switch implementations. So SAF is created in that specific way. So it means that you can change the underneath implementation of the ORM and it will continue working. Of course, there are some caveats and there are some specific things that the team from Developer Express have done to make it more transparent for anyone. But uh, basically, that's it. It's like you have this application framework, which is ORM agnostic, which in most cases is either depends on base classes or interfaces as contracts. So this can be easily replaced either by different platform implementation or by different ORM implementation. So in that way, it's something that is really nice to have. And I see here like some SAF veterans like JP. JP, thanks for helping me with my website 2 days ago or 3 days ago. I really appreciate that you sent me the message. So, okay. Um, Today is going to be hands-on, so I'm going to create the application and I'm going to explain the part of it. And then afterwards, everyone can open their microphone if they have specific questions about it. Well, let's go. Let's do it. So today we're going to use Visual Studio 2022. I'm using the community one, so you don't need anything special. You can even do this with Visual Studio VS Code. But I like Visual Studio, the normal one. So let's create a new project. And in this specific case, we're going to use SAF 25. This is a beta version, but there is something here that I really like that I want to show, which is basically my favorite feature that they have released for version 25. And that it was something that avoided me to move to Entity Framework in any possible way. So now that they have it, maybe I will do more Entity Framework solutions. Okay, so 25, so it is going to be SAF EF core demo. And now we have the wizard. So this wizard is asking us which target framework do we want. So it's complicated in the .NET world because you have like different frameworks. I mean, you have different names for the framework. You have the frameworks that are considered core, which are 2, 3, and 5. And after that, it's just called .NET. And the old framework, which was from 1 to 4.8, something like that, is called Net framework. So it's kind of confusing the naming, but this is the .NET is the modern one, the one that is actually right now in version 9, and version 10 is going to be released on December. And right now I'm talking about .NET framework, not Developer Express. So let's run the wizard. The first thing that the wizard asks us is which platforms we want to target. So basically, with XAF, we can create a web application, which is a Blazor application. We can create a desktop application, which is a Windows Forms application. And now this is something kind of new, but it sounds new for me because I've been in XAF for like 18 years or something like that. So for me, when it's 6 years old, it's still kind of a new thing, right? But it's the web API. So in this case, we're going to target all of them. And let's continue. The next big question is which ORM flavor we want to use. So the ORM that we're going to pick today, because this is the topic of today, is Entity Framework Core. Then this is a little bit more advanced. So we can create a project for doing end-to-end function tests, like a functionality test, which should not be confused with unit tests. You can do unit tests in any .NET application and in any XAF application, but in my personal opinion, if you're not a component vendor, it's an overkill to do a unit test. You have to do integration tests. Integration test will be something like, okay, I have an ERP and I have the invoicing module. And in the invoicing module, I can say, okay, I have the use case for create an invoice, delete an invoice, create a customer for the invoice, and so on and so forth. So you create your use cases, and then you make code to test that. So I guess testing will be one of the topics on the future, especially because there are many new testing features in .NET 10 that might be included in XAF too. So for this demonstration, we're going to only select one thing here, which is use central package management, which is a beautiful thing. You have all the NuGet configuration in one single file instead of in each project. So you don't run into this problem where you update one version and the other one gets get crazy or something like that. So next. This one is, as I tell you before, XAF has a security system, which is one of the nicest thing about XAF. The security system is, if the security system was a car, it would be some like a Ferrari, Maserati, or something like that. So it's like something really, really good. Just that is it. If you ever have to create a security system for yourself, and you can use XAF instead or Developer Express security system because it's also a separate product, I think just that pays the price of the license because it's something really, really complex to create. I can tell it because I have done one before. I have done like 3 of them. And yeah, that's something that you don't want to really do. And also, it's really easy to make mistakes there. So for the setup, we will do a standard authentication, which is with login and password. But you can also support Active Directory authentication. You can use Enter ID, which is from Azure B2C, and Azure B2C itself. This is also a different product. So regarding the options for the projects is, before XAF used to be more layer. So you have a module for the platform, and then the application. So 3 projects for each. And so it was 5 in total because you have the agnostic module that doesn't belong to any platform, not web or not Windows. Then you have the platform modules, which are web and window, and then you have the application, the head projects. So in the end, it used to make 5 projects, and this was kind of overwhelming for a person who was starting using XAF, because in most of the projects that you find in the wild, or the software that you have in the wild, most are done in a single project. You have everything there, the data access layer, the UI, blah, blah, blah. So to have 5 projects after you come from one seems a little bit overwhelming. So I guess they reduced that to make it more simple. That was always possible, but now it's part of the wizard, so you can select how you want it. So in this case, we're going to use integrated, which is single project, which means the module and the application will live in the same project. And then this one, this is something that I wanted to show, but I reported as a problem to Developer Express today. I like the idea of having a middle tier, which is basically having a separate server. And I think I can show the scheme, I mean, the how it looks like, I mean, a diagram. And I hope that I'm sharing the screen because I have 3 monitors, and I don't know, sometimes Zoom lose the monitor that I'm sharing. So if someone can confirm if you're seeing like Visual Studio and the wizard, it will be fine. I would really appreciate it. So going back to the idea of the middle tier, it goes something like this. So the middle tier is something like an application that sits between your application and the database. So it's good because it's an abstraction. So in here, you can introduce any other networking protocol, not the networking protocol that the database uses. So it's a really nice idea, and it's more secure. You can introduce compression and a lot of other nice things. Oh, it's a kind of advanced scenario, but that's what the middle tier means. For this version, which is a beta version, the middle tier is broken. I reported that today. So we're not going to use middle tier. We're going to use 2 tiers, which is direct access to the database. You have the database engine and you have your application. So just 1 second. I need to answer a message. So, okay, so we're going to select 2 tier just because it's broken in this specific version, which is a beta. So I guess it will be fixed on the real release. So one of the beautiful things about XAF is that it comes with a lot of functionality outside of the box. Basically, you can create your own modules, create your own reusable modules, use ones from community. I have done a few, Postulate have done a few too. And I think the people from, there is a German company, Safari, that also makes modules. So there are many ways to get a whole on new functionality, either created by you or by someone from your team, or by or just buying a commercial module or something like that. So there's like a lot of choices. And in here, I'm going to select the most common ones for an application. So I'm going to select the chart, the clone object, dashboard, file attachments. KPI, I love it. It's a really good idea if you ever want to keep track of something. And reports, and that's it. Well, validation is also a beautiful module. So we'll check some validation today. And one of my favorite, the state machine module, but it's not so popular, I guess. They say they keep it just for me. So it was nice to hear that from Developer Express. Okay, so let's finish this and let's see what we have. Okay, so here we have our solution. So now we have 3 projects. One is the Windows application, one is the Blazor application, and this is the agnostic module where you only have business logic that you want to share between the two implementations, the Blazor and Windows. So showing how the nuggets are working right now. See the package reference, they don't have a version because that is now, oh, this is strange, like I added this extension from Matt Christensen from Microsoft, which is really nice that you can see the file system, but sometimes it's not working because there is a file that I cannot see. So I will show the file system. So here we have this. Let's open this with Notepad. So here you can see the versions. See, this is a package version and includes the version, but in the ones in the solution, they don't have any version. So it's good you just use the directory props and then you can switch the version, but that's a different topic. So let's close this and let's go to the module. So in here, you can go to the business object section and you will see our folder and you will see some classes that are already created by XAF. So one is the application user. So as I told you, the security system requires a user. So there are some classes that will be created by the modules or by XAF itself. So you will have your own domain of expertise, your own domain domain objects, and then some of the domain objects will be included by XAF modules or the XAF core part or the security system. So just to show you, this is how the XAF architecture looks like. So it's funny, I Google XAF and a lot of the things are that you see in Google or in Bing are written by me. Okay, so this is the architecture. So first you have, they should update this picture because it's showing just XPO, but in the lower part you have the ORM, and then you have the business class library. Those are the libraries that are basic for some. For example, you need a definition of a report, which is a class, a definition of a user, which is a class, and so on and so on. The definition of a role, which is also another class. So then you have in this kind of pinkish part, your application specific business classes. So those will be the ones that you is your own domain of expertise, is the business problem that you're solving. So usually in your domain, like in your DB context, in another type of application that is not SAF, you will have only a few DB sets that are the ones that you define. But in here, you will find some other DB sets that are DB sets that belong to other SAF modules. And then you have the views, which are Windows Forms, ASP.NET. You have .NET Core and then Web Forms, which only works with Entity Framework, the regular one, not the core version. So as I told you, with the naming, it's a little bit tricky sometimes. And then you have the mobile part, which is actually now is Blazor. So yeah, this picture, it needs to be updated. And then you have something that is also one really good architectural part from SAF, which is the application model, which is a layer that sits in top of the application that can be by platform, which I mean Windows and web, or by user. So it means that you can, with the same set of classes and the same application actually itself, you can provide different view layouts, different settings for each of the view layouts, and a different UI configuration. So that's a really neat thing. You don't have to go back to the studio. Most of the stuff you can actually do on runtime. So also, if there are some questions, today is only me. Javier will not join us. So I will be taking a look to the chat from time to time to see if there is something that I can help you with. Okay, so let's go back to the code. And let's see, is this one? Okay, so these classes are created by SAF, and well, you have the context, right? So the context actually is in here, you have several classes. Some of them are some utilities that you need to adapt DB context to SAF. But really, you don't need to think so much about them. I was researching today the meaning of each of these classes, and it's basically nothing really important. It's some like bridge classes for the model. So something that you need to really take in consideration. So the important part here is, of course, the DB context. So the DB context has the model difference, which is that layer that I told you about, that there is like a set of configurations that can be by per platform and per user. So then you have like all of these DB sets are basically, they belong to SAF modules. For example, a DB set for saving the reports, a DB set for saving the file attachments. So don't get like a little bit like concerned when you see that they are here. There are a few techniques that you can use to include your own DB context. If you already have it, you can inherit this context from your DB context, or the other way around, right? So, or you can just copy the DB set here if you have the classes, if you have already an ORM that is working. So that's it for this part, at least for now. So there is something that I didn't like about Entity Framework Core, but I guess if you come from that background, it will be normal for you, which is the creation of migrations. I really don't like that. I don't like to create migrations. I know it's a good technique. I'm just lazy, and I'm spoiled by using XPO that do automatically migrations for you. So that's one of the, I told you that I wanted to show a really nice feature that I love in version 25, and that's the automatic migrations, which is not the name of the feature. It's called like DB Updater, which is the name that it has in XPO. So if we go and check the applications, here we're going to take the Windows application, and we're going to open the Blazor application too. So both of them have this method, which is database mismatch, which means the database doesn't exist or the schema doesn't match the classes. So once that happens, you can see here that this is protected by an if, and the if is if the debugger is attached, then it means that we are running this from Visual Studio. So it means that you don't have a production database. So it will update the schema for you. Otherwise, it will not. So you will see this message and you will get a compatibility exception. But right now, this used to do it just the first time, create the database for you. But afterwards, if you change the classes, the schema was not being updated, which for me sucks, because every time you work on the classes and you do like 2 or 3 properties, you need to generate a migration and to run the migration. And there are so many techniques to do that. JP showed me a few techniques one time. We have another customer who have a different personal updater. I have my own too. I did one like 1 month ago or 2 months ago for a customer. So I'm glad that they have set this feature already. So it's like one-to-one to XPO. And this application database mismatch exists in both applications, in the Windows Forms application and in the Blazor application. So let's see, still not questions. So far, so good. So now let's run this for first time. There is one step that I'm going to do. Forget about it. It's just for my specific computer. I'm using a ARM X64 CPU, which is a Microsoft Surface. So SQL Server doesn't exist for ARM architecture, or at least the client doesn't exist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force it to be platform specific, and I'm going to move this to X64. So it means that all applications will run in a 64-bit thread, because if I do any CPU will run in my native architecture, which is ARM, and the database doesn't exist for that, the client. For Postgres, for example, for MySQL, I think they both have ARM clients, but not SQL Server from Microsoft. So I'm going to set as a startup project the Windows project, and let's continue. Let's run this. So see, if any of you is new in SAF, what is going to happen is that SAF is going to create a database, and in the SAF internal model, 3 views are going to be created for each of the classes. One is called the detail view, which is the form where you fill the properties of a record. Then the list view, which is a collection of like records, and then the lookup list view. So there are 3 views for each object or domain object. So in here, you might wonder, like, how do we log in? Like, what does this mean? SAF applications, they have this part which is called the updater, which is where you initialize your application data. For example, let's say that you want to create the cities of your country, or you want to create some users or some roles like accounting role, invoicing role, and so on. You do that here. So you do that through something that we call the object space that allows you to instantiate objects. So it also controls the transactions. You should almost never use directly the DB context when you're using SAF, because that is it's a layer that is below SAF, which is the ORM. So SAF provides an abstraction that is called the object space. So here in the updater, we can see that a role is created and a user is created, a username user and a username admin, and there is an admin role and a user role. So let's go here and let's log in. Oh, it's going wrong. How could I fail? Like, it's just one letter and I failed. So I see some familiar faces here, like in the Javier is back. So
Yeah, hello everyone. Sorry I'm a little bit late, but I didn't want to miss the party.
yeah, so we're having like a code party here. So it's like Entity Framework party. So okay, so this is the application running. As you remember, there were some DB sets that are not created by you. We have not created any class yet. So these are part of the framework. So we log in because we have the application user, the application role, and then you have reports because we have the reporting model. So we have the reporting on the dashboard here. And all of them will be stored in a SQL Server database. So let's do Management Studio so you can see. You can see that this is a new database that was created. And I'm going to close it because I want to actually add some classes. Okay, so you'll see a few this database there because I try a lot of things. And I try to clean up, but it's like still like a little bit messy. So SAF EF core demo. So these are the tables that we have. As you can see, there is nothing that is actually created by me at this moment, because we have not added any class yet. So before I add a domain object, I want to talk about base classes. So in XPO, there are a few base classes that, depending on the base class that you use, you will have different functionality, like built-in key generation, deferred deletion, and optimistic locking. So those 3 things are really valuable, at least in my perspective. I don't want to implement that. I have done that doing adult.NET, the original version that used data tables, data sets, and data adapters. And it can get messy, to be honest. So you don't want to do that. It's like something that you really don't want to do. There are several ways to implement that functionality. And again, I'm going to refer to our friend of the show, JP. There was one day that he did an amazing demonstration on how to achieve all of this in the first version of this meeting that was getting started with Entity Framework Core. So I just wanted to show you this functionality. This equivalence, it doesn't exist for Entity Framework, but the people from Developer Express have provided us a specific class for Entity Framework that provides all that functionality. So let me show you what I mean. So a new item, EF core business object, and we're going to call this customer. And okay, here we have this base object. In XPO, it's called the same, but they come from different assemblies and from different namespaces. But they both provide the same functionality, which is deferred deletion, optimistic concurrency, and key generation. So as you can see here, you have they inject the object space, so it's the object space link interface. You have a GC record, which is something beautiful, to be honest, and something for optimistic concurrency or optimistic logging. So, and they implemented the on change already because you need to have change notifications on the properties so the UI respond to what you're doing. So you can use your own object without any base implementation like this. But if you want to save a lot of time, inherit your objects from this object, and that will be perfect. But you need to know that a few other properties are going to be implemented, like the optimistic locking and the GC record field. Also, there is another thing that the key, if you have already a class and you change the base, you might need to delete the key that you have already defined because there is a key property defined in here. So, but for the time being, imagine that this is a new application that you don't have any ORM. So you just want to come here. So in here, they tell you a few things, right? For example, in XPO, you have a really big definition of a property, which they have collapsed by adding some special methods for the setters. Because in the set is where you need to either safeguard to see, like to not trigger if it's the same value or if it's loading, or to um, actually trigger so something can react to the change notification of the property. But in Entity Framework Core, that works a little bit different. What you do is that you make them virtual. So a virtual property will be overridden in compile time, and the change notification will be injected in compilation time. So the code looks a little bit smaller. That's nice also. So you have name, so we can add a few other properties. Last name. Let's add another one. Code. So that's it. And well, let's run this one more time. So this is going to be created for us in the database, and the scheme is going to be updated. But before I do this, because if I do it just this, nothing will happen actually. But this is how you XPO do it. But what we need to do here is to go to our DB set, sorry, our DB context, and add a DB set property. So let's do something like this. Well, beautiful intelligence and compilers, and compilers. So now we have the DB set. That means that this is going to represent the table and is going to be updated because of the database mismatch. So let's run this one more time. And let's see how it goes. Okay, so now we have customer here, which is the one that we just added. It's showing as a navigation item because the class has this default class option attribute, which means this class can be included as a navigation item. It will be available for the report, and views are going to be created for this. And by views, I mean the list view, lookup list view, and detail view. So let's create a customer. Name, this is me, my last name, and the code is 001. And then let's create the great and only Javier, Colombier, and 002. And we're going to create JP, and it's going to be 003. And we save this, and if we go to the database, we
Thank
check.
you.
Hi, JP.
Hi.
Let's see, it's here. I hope that it's not super basic for you, JP, but it's an introductory explanation for everyone who is new to SAF. So now we have customer, and then we have the data here. And there we have our 3 records. And since I want to show the defer deletion functionality, I will go to my app and delete myself because Javier is nice and JP is nice, so I'm the one should be deleted. So let's refresh this. And this will still be in the database, but it will contain GC record, which means garbage collected. So it's a logic delete. And it's good because you don't have to worry about constraints because you cannot delete a master object if it has detail or associations. Of course, you can do cascade delete in Entity Framework core, and you can configure the delete on that way. But since I come from XPO, it's something that I just really don't think about it. So I assume like defer deletion. So, and also the optimistic concurrency log, which means I use that object and I get, when I update it, I set the number 1. If we both get a copy right now, let's say that Javier is editing the record and I'm editing the record too, we will both get number 1. If I save first, it will become number 2. And when Javier tries to save, it will give you a problem of concurrency. So that's a functionality that you really don't want to implement by hand. And it comes out of the box with SAF. One more thing good thing for SAF. Okay, so the other thing that I want to show is I want to show a little bit of the things that I consider nice in SAF that you might have not seen if you have not used SAF before and you want to include your entity framework knowledge in here. One of the modules that is more interesting for me, or the most interesting for me, beside the state machine module, is the validation module. This is something that that is a complicated topic within an organization because if I ask 3 different persons in a team, okay, I want to do these validations for the domain objects. Someone will do it in the UI, someone will do it in the store procedure, someone will do it like a helper class. So the thing that you have with SAF is that you have a unified way to do the stuff. You can do it in several ways, but there is always kind of a recommended way to do it. So here you have all these rules. Whenever I show these rules to my students, especially if they come from a big organization, they tell me like just 7 rules or 8. I don't know how many there are, but there's not so much. And they say like, I need like thousands of rules to validate my business logic. It's really complex. I say, no, you need just this, believe me. So we're going to do like a most basic validation, which is rule required field. So let's say that I want to make the code required. So I can say rule required field. And then you have some parameters. You can say the ID. And usually for ID, I use the class name and the property name. Then it asks me for, let's see which overload we need. The default context. So I want to validate this one I'm saving. You have a few contexts, saving, deleting, and then you can take your own context that is not saving or deleting that you can do it like arbitrary. For example, that you're making a process that is calculating interest, and then you have a specific validation for the objects before you calculate the interest. So you can create a context called calculate interest. So, but for the time being, let's keep it simple. So let's do save. And then I guess that's the only thing that I need. Then I guess message template, which is code is required. There is already a built-in message that will be calculated by the rule and then the name of the property, but you can write whatever you want if you use your own template. So this one and the second one, and that I'm going to put it at the class level, is, let's see, here. Combination of properties unique. Those are the most common validations that you might find in in a business application. And people confuse this validation with adding composite primary keys, but no, they try to make everything part of the key. So it use a validation, but what they're doing is adding a constraint actually. So this will put at the class level. And the rule name ID, I'm going to do it like that, like say, keep it like that. And the combination should be that name and last name are unique. So let's run this again. Let's log in. Okay, so we have Javier, right? And let's create a new record that is exactly like Javier. So it's going to be, we're going to leave it first without code to see if the validation triggers. So let's add Jose Colombier. So this will bring two different problems. It's like the first one is that the combination of properties is not unique anymore. There's another Jose Colombier inside of the database. And also I'm not adding the code, so the customer code. So when we validate, it will show that right now that this one is required, the code is required. I don't know why it didn't show maybe when I actually fill this one, it's going to try to just validate again. Okay, the save seems fine. Context save, name and last name. Okay, let's see. This is strange.
Shouldn't be the
Yeah, because it's because it's Javier, it's not Jose, right? It's just for you, for the people who don't know, we use both names in Spanish, like Jose Javier and Jose Manuel, which is me. So sometimes I call him Javier, sometimes rarely I call him Jose, but that was the problem. So that's the other rule that is being broken. That there is a record that that combination is there already. So so let's use the full name so we don't have that problem. Jose Javier Colombier. That's perfect. Good. So the other thing that I want to show you is like, okay, you have, let's say that you know Entity Framework Core and you know how to do the BB set and the classes and so on. So, and you're fine with the forms. So now you want to interact with the records. So let's do something here. Let's do another property, which will be type of Boolean, which will be active. Oh, if I can spell active. And this will be Boolean. Okay. And then if you want to interact with your objects, you need to create a view controller because XAF is a model view controller framework. So let's create a view controller. So this will be called customer controller. And in here we can create actions. There are 4 different type of actions. With again, when I explain this to people who is moving from traditional development to SAF, they say like, just 4 actions, I need hundreds of actions. No, you need 4, and it's fine. So we're going to add a simple action, which is a button basically. So for that, if you use CodeRush, there is a shortcut which is SAF action simple. I will make this bigger. So SAF action simple, and then we will call it set customer. Sometimes I say customer because in Spanish we have really strong O's, and in English it's not like that, right? So forgive my pronunciation sometimes. So this is going to be called set customer. I can see I say customer, not customer. And then let's add the caption. Caption set customer active. Then thanks Copilot. So we have basically declared a button in code, and then see there is already a suggestion from Copilot. It's wrong, it's wrong actually, but it's a lot like we might need. Okay, so each view has either a collection of objects or a current object, which is the object that you're sitting on top. So we can say like view current object. The selected object was an hallucination, and we cast it as customer. And then if it's not null, if that is possible, actually, we will set the customer to active and commit the change. So we didn't have to load it because the object is already loaded in the view, but it's loaded through this abstraction, which is the object space. And it controls the transaction. And you don't have to go to the DB context level. You can do it, but don't. That's why, I mean, the abstraction is there for some specific reason. So SAF I object space. I think that Javier has a really nice video talking about the object space providers, because there are different object space providers, and about the object space interface. He did an introduction for SAF, but it's XPO, but some of the concepts are totally agnostic, so you can actually take a look to that, and it will make sense. So see, this interface has most of the proper methods that you might need to handle data in an agnostic way. It actually, when you do it like this, you kind of really don't see if you're using entity framework or XPO, because it's basically an abstraction. In XPO, you have to use the unit of work session, and in the framework, you have to use the DB context. But this is on top of that, so it's an abstraction that hides the internal logic of each of those ORMs. So you can see here, like, for example, you have create collection, you might have something like create detail view, create data view, create object, and so on and so forth, right? So it's basically an abstraction. Like, if you learn how to use the object space, you can go either way, XPO or entity framework. So it's up to you. So let's see how this runs. Just before I move forward, like the controllers, you can set them to work on only specific views. You don't want this button to show in every possible screen of the application, right? So we're going to narrow it down. You can narrow it down by type and by type of view, and also by view ID, but let's do it by this. So this target object type. So this controller will be activated only when the object that we're seeing is a customer or child of the customer. So it can be international customer, which will be a class that inherits from customer. Then only on a specific view type. So not in the list, not in the combo box, but on the form, which is called detail view. And I will leave it like that for right now. I don't want to go so deep on that, because this is just an introductory demonstration. I remember like a long time ago, I used to go in El Salvador when I was living in El Salvador, my home country. I used to go to companies to try to convince them to use XAF. And I did all this presentation, but with XPO. Of course, I spoke like for 3 hours because they have like a lot of questions. But sometimes we were able to sell the project. So people is against application framework for some strange reason. For me, it doesn't make sense. You want the framework, actually. So okay, so let's see. We go to a customer. Now we have a new field, so all the customers are inactive because it's a new property and it's null. So JP, set customer to active. Bam. Here, there was a transaction. So now it's active. The same goes for Javier. And the same for me. And that's how you interact actually with your objects. If we go to any other view, for example, if we go to user and we see the form, we don't have that action because we told the controller you only going to be activated if the view is type of customer and if it's a detailed view. And well, I guess that will be everything for the demonstration for today. I guess it's a really simple demonstration, but I didn't want to overwhelm with a lot of little details. I guess we can go deeper on this when we have the real version of 25, because there are some things like the middle tier that I wanted to show, but it's not working. Actually, I put a ticket today for that. Javier or JP, if there's something that you want to show or talk about before we finish the session of today, JP, if you want to shine some light here, you're always welcome.
Yes, I have a question to the audience. How many are already using XAF, and are those XPO users, or are there entity framework victims?
Well, let's see what people answer. To be honest, JP, and I will give you the opinion that people that contact us, for most people is XPO. They kind of know the framework through XPO or through the controls. But for a moment, like 1 year ago, we have this wave of customers saying, let's move to entity framework. And then they withdraw from that idea. So,
To go back to XPO, you mean?
yes. Yes. And to be honest, I kind of like in this version 25, since they added the updater, for me, that was a deal breaker by using like entity framework. I just don't like migrations. Personal opinion, of course. But now I guess I will take a look to it. I will take a look to it because I like Postgres database a lot. And you can do in entity framework, you can go have more granular detail about some Postgres things, especially for AI, that you can vectorize some things. You can always do that in XPO, but I just want to play the field right,
Yeah,
yeah.
one of the things you mentioned in the beginning was the migration from XPO to entity framework. But one of the things you've already seen is that in this case, the base object from your customer is using a primary key based on ID, and in XPO it's OID.
Mhm.
So you first have to start to
Yes. Nice that you remind me that. Yes, we have that problem also. We have that problem in a mapping in that customer that they wanted to move. We need to rename all the properties, the key properties. So we were like one by one doing that or doing the mapping. So yes, I guess you have experimented a lot with entity framework.
I know.
Yeah, I remember you showed me all the experiments. So we need to do one more show with you, like afternoon with JP.
Next
Yeah,
session, yes.
it's summer, so it's time to do some testing again, or almost summer. Okay, Michael is using entity framework. I don't know, Michael, are you using entity framework, the regular one or core? Just to, because there is a lot of people with high expertise in the old entity framework too. So Martin said, there are any situations where you have to have knowledge, or is everything? Well, you need, Martin, just to answer your question, you need to have knowledge in the way that when you define your DB context, because you can play with the DB context. You can remap the types, doing relationship on when the context is spin up. You don't have to do it in the classes themselves. But once you define the context, from there on, everything is kind of an abstraction. So you don't need a specific knowledge. Whatever you will learn, it will work for mostly both. And Michael said that is core. So yes, I guess like still like XPO is winning JP. So, and I'm glad for that. And to be honest, I hope that if one day they stop doing XPO or make it XPO, they will make it open source. And I hope to take to be like the owner of the repository, because I created a lot of XPO providers. So I feel like I deserve it. So people from Developer Express, if you're watching this, you can take me in consideration for when you make XPO open source. Well, I guess that's it. JP, anything else that you want to add?
No, not at the moment. No.
Yeah, we will have to talk with you again. Like, so you show us your new magic, your new tricks. So we make a new show with you. Okay, guys. So it was nice to have you around. I hope that this demonstration was good enough for the people who is new into SAF, actually. You can contact us in the Facebook group. I guess everyone who is here came through the Facebook group. And see you on June. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.